Hey everybody, it's Atheist for the Cause here, and I've got a video for you from the Young Turks. That's Cenk Uyger, and let's have a listen.
So you know what Donald Trump's done so far. He has picked people to lead divisions that are the exact opposite of what those divisions do. So he picked Scott Pruitt, who...
This is very telling in my opinion. He's explaining how, basically Trump is deregulating, and he puts people into office into these positions that deregulate. And he doesn't think that, say, the EPA should deregulate. He thinks under his thought process, the EPA should always be adding more regulations. So, see, in my view, we should have, like the Democrats are going to come in and tend to regulate more, and the Republicans are going to come in and take away regulations. In my opinion, that's how the government is when it's operating best. That's how it's operating, because the Democrats add all these regulations, and the Republicans are like, these are the worst ones that we want to cut. And then the Democrats add more on, and the Republicans are like, these are the worst ones we want to cut. And you keep the best ones. And but in Cenk's worldview, it's just the EPA's job is just pile more on, just more and more regulations, never enough. And I don't agree that the EPA's job is just to sit and pile on regulations.
Who had sued the EPA about a dozen times, intent on destroying all the regulations as the head of the EPA. He picked...
Well, yeah, that was because he had other interests at the time, and also because he thought the EPA was overstepping. So now he's going to try to put the EPA in a position where he doesn't think that it's overstepping. I mean, this is pretty basic, Cenk.
Rick Perry to lead the Department of Energy when Rick Perry had said the Department of Energy should be disbanded. So you know his pattern. So you know that when I tell you...
Pretty much the same thing.
His new pick for the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department is not going to be in favor of civil rights. He's going to be the opposite. You're not going to be surprised, right? But there's a twist to this story. So the guy is Eric Dreiband, and he has no experience, of course, in...
When you're listening to this, keep in mind, when is the last time you heard... Cenk or anybody on the left really be happy about anybody that Trump picked? I mean, they're not giving credit to anybody. So I mean, your side lost, so you're not gonna like these people, but that doesn't make all of them incompetent. And at this point, the left is basically the boy who cried wolf, and it sucks for someone like me where, maybe this guy is incompetent, but the right certainly isn't going to criticize them for the most part. They're going to support them. And the left, for the most part, is going to criticize them, but I'm going to see it as partisanship. And there's going to be and I can't trust the left media right now, because all they do is lie. So it leaves this huge hole where am I supposed to get information I can trust from the left for actual legitimate, criticisms? It's actually becoming really, really difficult.
Police reform or hate crimes or discrimination, voting rights, housing, education, you name it. He has no experience in it. Civil rights experts and leaders say that he is in fact opposed to civil rights reforms and legislation. Not remotely surprised.
I love I just love how he's like, yeah, he's opposed to civil rights reforms, just in general, all of them. He's not in favor of any civil rights reforms at all. I mean, that's a pretty freaking broad category.
Surprising. And so if you're a Trump supporter, you're thinking, yeah, that's right, baby. No more civil rights. I got it. I'm not surprised by that. And
Actually, I'm not thinking that, but I certainly don't trust you to give me a fair and balanced argument about why this guy's incompetent. So I'm not going to trust you, and that kind of leaves a hole because it's actually really difficult to judge whether these people are competent or not from, the outside.
I don't think that this is going to change your opinion in that sense if that was all there was to the story. But it turns out there is a reason why they picked Eric Dreiband. He does have some civil rights experience.
Oh, so basically everything you just said up to this point, for the most part, has been bullshit. Because you were arguing that he has no civil rights experience, except that he does. Jesus Christ, make up your mind.
You know what it is? He has experience defending the civil rights of corporations.
And the owners who control those corporations or stockholders.
He has no experience defending the civil rights of human beings, but those poor multinational corporations. However could they defend themselves if there weren't heroes like Eric Dreiband to step up for them? I mean, sure, they get paid millions of dollars.
Well, I mean, that's actually a legitimate question. How would companies defend themselves if there weren't lawyers to defend them? I mean, someone's got to do it, right? Am I just crazy here?
To do that kind of work, but still, they are true civil rights heroes. So he's worked for Bloomberg, CVS Pharmacy, R.J. Reynolds Tobacco, and all of these corporations who have to have their civil rights protected. One of the main issues that the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department does is employment discrimination. He, of course, is on the other side of that equation. So if you want to do employment discrimination, who do you bring in? You bring in a guy who has defended corporations on very similar matters. So Trump voters, the joke isn't just on liberals or progressives, it's also on you. You thought he was going to drain the swamp? You think he was going to stand up for the little guy?
I think he has largely drained the swamp. Now, I don't expect Trump to be able to come in and completely drain the swamp in, a couple months. That's not going to happen. In fact, I don't expect the swamp to be completely drained in his first term. But he's already reformed the Republican Party drastically to a party that I like much more than I did pre-Trump. Like, it's not even close. And now, with the Democrats, he's pretty much taken down the Democratic establishment at this point. Hillary Clinton was destroyed. And I mean, the establishment's still there, but they used to have an easy stranglehold. The corporate liberals or whatever, corporate Democrats, they had an easy stranglehold on the party. Now the progressives are a huge force. And I'm not a huge fan of the progressives, but, when you have a corrupt... I would want true liberals to get in on the Democratic side. But the only liberals, it seems, on the that are, liberal leaders, basically, seem to be completely corrupted and corporatized. And so we have to tear down the liberal establishment in order, and, the rise of the progressives will help. And then hopefully we can build up a reasonable, non-corrupted, and less corporatized, at the very least, liberal establishment. And that would, be a huge benefit, but that's going to take years. And then you look at the mainstream media, which I think is part of the establishment in a slightly different way. And he's completely destroyed. Well, I don't want to say completely destroyed, but he's put a huge dent into the perception of CNN. And he's really hurt the perception of the mainstream media in general. And, MSNBC's hurt, Washington Post, New York Times. So Trump has done a lot of good work. I'm sure you can point to places where he could do more, but I mean, I'm happy enough for now.
No, he just picked another guy that would that has a history of defending the rights of giant big business, working with big government to make sure that the little guy doesn't stand a chance. That's who Donald Trump is.
But is he a good lawyer? I mean, can he do the job well?
He's the swamp. Look it up, man. Eric Dreiband. Go look at his experience, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
I mean, his job is mainly to carry out what Trump wants his policy to be. Of course, he's going to have some influence on policy too, but he's, it's, the picture is far greater than just him. So
Trump never meant a word of him saying that he was for the little guy, and now there's ample evidence of it.
Okay, so Cenk, who would you have preferred that's like a Republican or conservative? I don't think there's a person that you wouldn't have complained about, to be honest. But okay, you want me to look this stuff up. So I found this article on the Powerline blog in it, and it talks about this pick, and it says a stellar choice to head the Civil Rights Division. And I'm not taking a stance on, I'm making this clear, I'm not taking a stance on whether this guy is good or bad. I really don't know. I always find it incredibly tough to judge these things, and I basically try to judge based on how I think, policy played out. I think, it's much better to look back on what happened rather than project on what will happen. So, says President Trump has nominated my friend and former law partner Eric Dreiband to be Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. This is a fantastic selection. Eric is an outstanding lawyer, a solid conservative, and one of the finest individuals I know. A solid conservative. I wonder why Cenk hates him. Politico, oh God, greets Eric's nomination with a hit piece called Activists Unhappy with Trump's Nominee to Lead Civil Rights Unit. Now keep in mind, this is from the Politico. Like what this blog is about to describe, it's all from the Politico. So that's going to be a little important. The article by Diamond Nagasayu emphasizes that Eric has defended companies accused of discrimination. The horror! It's kind of strange how, that's the exact argument that Cenk was making for the Young Turks. Oh, what a coincidence. The article breezes past the fact that, as general counsel of the Equal Employment Commission during the Bush administration, Eric litigated against companies accused of discrimination. A fair-minded observer, so more company talk, just like the Young Turks. A fair-minded observer would probably conclude that a lawyer who has litigated on both sides in discrimination cases is particularly well qualified to lead the Civil Rights Division. But the activists whose voices dominate Sue's article aren't fair-minded. It's kind of amazing how close this sounds to like the Young Turks so far. Eric was well regarded by the lawyers I know at the EEOC. At the time he left the commission to become a partner at our law firm, at least 3 EEOC lawyers spoke glowingly to me about him. Their politics ranged from left to hard left. Eric earned their praise not by selling out his conservative principles, as sometimes happens in these cases. Instead, he earned it by treating EEOC lawyers with respect, hearing them out, supporting them when he agreed with their conclusions, and not making them look bad when he did not. The other attack against Eric aired in Sue's article is that he brings little to no experience in the critical areas of voting rights. I'll be damned. This is exactly what the Young Turks brought up. Policing reform or criminal justice generally. Yeah, I think the Young Turks brought that up too. Jesus Christ, did the Young Turks do any of their own research, or did they just steal their entire narrative from Politico? Come on. Are you really going to try to tell me that the Young Turks isn't a corporate shill at this point? Their narrative is exactly the same. It's not just that they have the same position, they have the same wording, word for word practically. This attack is wrong on the facts. Eric has experience in the area of criminal justice. It's kind of weird that the Young Turks would be wrong in the exact same way Politico would be wrong. Indeed, he has experience both on the prosecution side. He received an award for his work in the prosecution of Webb Hubbell, and the defense side, for example, representing an African-American homosexual in a homicide case. That sounds like defending the multinational corporations, as Cenk put it. In any event, the head of the Civil Rights Division does not need experience in every subject matter area under his purview, any more than the Attorney General needs experience in all areas of his portfolio, civil rights, antitrust, criminal law, or the Secretary of State needs experience or expertise regarding all of the major world powers and hotspots. And I actually completely agree with this. They should have, experience in some areas, but it's unrealistic a lot of times to expect, them to be experts in every single area. Did Devel Patrick, who headed the Civil Rights Division during a portion of the Bill Clinton administration, have experience in all the relevant areas? Criminal justice, employment discrimination, voting rights, fair housing? Jesus, those are the same exact things that Cenk was bringing up. When he was selected by Clinton at the age of 38, it appears not. They didn't care back then, though, did they? Same, it appears, with Vanita Gupta, who headed the division towards the end of the Obama administration and is one of the main activist critics cited by Politico Sue. But Patrick and Gupta are of the left, and not white males, so the breadth of their experience didn't matter to activists. I just love that line because it's so true. If you fall into, the wrong category, which is, the white male category especially, and especially if you're straight and rich, and cisgendered and ableist, they are not going to like you just based on, the group you belong to. Gupta gives the game away when he says, whoever leads the crown jewel of the Justice Department must have deep relationships with stakeholders and marginalized communities. In other words, the Civil Rights Division must be headed by someone who supports the left civil rights agenda. Well, I would take it in a different direction, and I would say that what he's really saying here is it needs to be headed by a minority. Someone who fits the right group, the right identity. President Trump apparently did not get the memo. Neither did the Attorney General and his top officials. They take the quaint view that the leader of the Civil Rights Division should be someone whose commitment is to enforce the civil rights laws as written and interpreted by the Supreme Court, not to promote the special interests of stakeholders in marginalized communities. I know, crazy thought, right? That your job is to, follow the law and interpret the law or argue the law. How refreshing. Years ago, some conservatives I respect criticized the Obama administration for filling important legal positions, including some with relevance to the war on terrorism, with attorneys who had provided legal services for terrorist detainees. I defended the Obama administration and came in from criticism from conservatives. I respect after I told the Huffington Post that the attacks on the attorneys in question resembled McCarthyism in some respects, though not in others. So this is a lawyer who has specifically been willing to clean his own house, if you will. If a lawyer isn't disqualified from service in positions relevant to combating terrorism by virtue of having defended suspected or actual terrorists, I am hard-pressed to see why a lawyer should be disqualified from service in positions relevant to combating unlawful discrimination by virtue of having defended companies, one or more of whose employees may or may not have engaged in unlawful discrimination. Note, I have updated this post to discuss Eric's experience in the area of criminal law. Now, I'm not saying this is proof, and I'm not saying this blog alone has swayed me. I'm not taking a position on whether this guy is worthwhile or not. But it does seem there is some evidence here that Cenk was at least full of shit. And there's more evidence here that all he did was steal the political article and copy their narrative, pretty much word for word. They're getting so incredibly lazy. Have a good one, guys.